Happy Monday, everybody. It's Jim, it's Matt, and we're here to talk, about some fun stuff over the weekend. We saw some basketball, we saw some golf, we saw some Olympics. I mean, a little bit of everything this past weekend. And let's kick it off, Matt. You and I were talking on Friday about the golf, and it was kind of a fun, uh, dramatic ending.
Yeah, I when started writing my piece on it this weekend, I was thinking about it. It was the weekend of comebacks in golf.
Hmm.
Whether it was on the Live Golf Tour or whether you were in the PGA Tour, it was the weekend of comebacks. You had Scotty Scheffler once again. He fired an uninspiring round of even par on the first day at
Hmm.
Pebble Beach. Heaven forbid. And then over the course of the next 3 days would go on and be in a position where once he made his birdie putt on 18, he'd be tied for the lead at 20 under
Hmm.
um, at Pebble. Obviously, that scoring lead then got reset by Minwoo Lee, who birdied
Hmm.
4 of his last 6 to reset the scoring in the clubhouse at 21 under.
Hmm.
And then you get to that final group that sat there and they waited and they waited and they waited a little bit more on Jacob Bridgman to finally figure out how the hell to get the hole in the ball on 18, but he did it. And by God, he somehow only got a 6 on that hole. But
It
you
was
know, it,
wild.
yeah, it took him a while. But I think there's honestly the hole played fantastically for Morikawa. It
Mhm.
was almost somewhere where he would have had to have been essentially pointing himself directly at the ocean in order to hit the ball into the ocean. I mean, that would have been the only way he probably loses that golf tournament.
Mhm.
But he hits a cut, and the wind was coming in hard off the ocean.
Mhm.
Obviously, it was a little bit more of a right pin location that worked out in his favor. He hits it, sticks in that heavy rough, but he was able to
Mhm.
put it out, get down in 2, even while his playing partner, one of them, Seb Straka, made eagle to tie Minwoo at 21 under, putting a little bit of pressure on Morikawa.
Mhm.
Um, but he was able to come through, claiming his first victory in over 2 years. I think it's
Yeah,
800 plus days it
it
had
was
been
two and a
since
half years.
he
Yeah.
won. Yeah.
After the event, Morikawa was talking. I was listening to his interview with Sirius XM, and he was talking about that. The shot you were talking about.
Mhm.
He said, "I just hit it as hard as I could left because he says I knew if I just hit it, the wind would blow it. In the bunker or in places I really didn't want to play." So he said he just hit it as hard as he could left, and he said he got lucky because the ball, landed where you're talking about in the rough, but didn't go into anything that he couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
So he said that. Then he let us in on a little secret, and that was um, when he was out the Sony where you were.
Hmm.
He missed the cut.
Yeah.
And so he came back to California and he was playing golf with a couple of friends and a couple of caddies that they know. And he was having trouble putting. And one of the caddies hands him a putter and says, "Well, try this one." And he said, he figured, all right, give it a shot. And he was putting fantastic with the putter. It was perfect for what he wanted. And he goes, "Where'd you get this putter?" And the guy goes, I've been caddying um, for Corda, and it's one of her putters." And he goes, "Can I use it?" He goes, "Yeah, you can use it." He said he used it the rest of the round that they were playing. And he
Hmm.
said, from that point forward, he said he bought the putter off the guy, and he goes, "Yeah, well, tell Nellie that I've got her putter. Evidently, she's got like 8 of them, but they're all the same." And so he was using Nellie Quarter's putter. So it was. He just said, because I asked him, "What did you do for the time? Time wasting the time." He goes, "What I tried to do is focus." Because I looked out and I focused on, the ocean. He goes, "I just trying to clear my mind." But he did say something interesting. He said after uh, coming before he hit the first ball on Thursday, he said, "I went through every YouTube video of events where I've done well." And he
Hmm.
said, kept trying to look at, okay, what did I do? It was more of a psyching myself up kind of thing than technical. And then
Hmm.
he said, um, the one funny thing on the way back to the media area was he saw Scotty Scheffler, and Scotty came up to him, gave him a big hug, shook his hand, said, way to go. And he said, something, Scotty? He goes, "Yeah, what's that?" And he goes, if you weren't such a terrible golfer on Thursday, this would be yours. and they laughed, and he came into the media tent. So basically, it was a good time had by all. But man, 21 on that course, that's stunning to me. That's a phenomenal.
Yeah, if I was going through the PGA Tour's notes on it, and if I
Mhm,
remember correctly, I think they said at 22 under he tied the scoring record for a
mhm,
tournament at Pebble Beach. It was incredibly like, and it has a lot to do with the conditions. The conditions
mhm.
on the first couple of days were fantastic, and even on that last day,
They weren't
when
bad. Yeah.
yeah, when the winds kicked up and stuff like that, like they weren't unplayable. They weren't like the daunting pebble conditions that you hear of. They weren't good, but they
Mhm,
weren't like, oh my God, this is awful. Especially like on 18. 18, those winds, I mean, they kind of protect you unless you just hit it so far left and against that wind
mhm.
that you can't really go out of play to the left down there in the ocean, where we saw a couple guys try to save it. You saw Jordan Spieth save a par from down there. You
Yeah.
saw Jacob Bridgman attempt to try and save his par from down there. Didn't work out. Those weren't the only visitors, I don't believe, but it was that, and just really good golf all around played down the stretch, like from those guys, especially in that final group. Seb Straka, I don't think he pretty much flew under the radar in terms of this tournament, kind of
Mhm,
sitting around that back half of the top 10, inching into it later there at the end of round three. And then he wasn't really, as you watch the leaderboard come down, he wasn't really at the top by any measure, but he had himself in a position where he was at 19 under on 18 and made that eagle, which you would have thought might have put a little pressure on Morikawa, but he was able to get up and down just fine.
yeah, it was a wild tournament. Speaking of wild, we had a wild finish at the Daytona 500, where on the last lap, um, there were 5 cars that any one of the 5 could have won. Um, and Chase Briscoe, the Chase Elliott and Richard Childers' team looked like they had it wrapped, and then all of a sudden there was a hell of a collision, and they didn't bring out the yellow flag, which made sense, because for all intents and purposes the race was going to be over, and Reddick won it, and it was a good win for him. It was the first win, of course, his first Daytona 500 win, but also it's the first win for Michael Jordan's group, and it turned out really well.
Yeah. Good for them. I believe there was a clip going around about Michael Jordan after the race that has
Mm-hmm.
been popularized, and I'm pretty sure it was miscontextualized as well. Um, but
Wouldn't be the
that
first time.
Yeah, that's really that was the main headline I got out of that, was this clip of Michael Jordan, what may or may not have been him trying to air out a kid's shirt.
Air. Oh, I don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was a strange clip. I've seen different takes on it. It's out there. If people want to know more, they are more than welcome to go looking for it.
Go
So,
go go chase it down. We're not going to give it to you.
yep.
It's it was really, you know it was really fun for him. I hadn't really seen Michael. Obviously he hasn't been in the winning circle down there, but it was. He actually goes to most of the races, and he's very big. He grew up a NASCAR fan. He's still a NASCAR fan, and he sunk some cash into definitely an interesting group of drivers, and so good for him. They won, and they walked away with the victory.
Yeah. it's good to see him make a smart investment after the or have an
Yeah,
investment pay off after he had been a part of the Hornets for so long.
yeah. I'm not certain that that pro basketball will ever be, you know, uh, anything in in Charlotte. I mean, there's so much in the way of stuff going on in Charlotte that you would think that you know it's so much college basketball. North Carolina's a college basketball state, and I
Yeah.
really don't think that you're going to get there by you're going to get there by doing things like having pro basketball. They've had two franchises there in Charlotte, and the first one got George Shinn moved the first one to New Orleans, and the second one's not doing that much better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the Hornets aren't a very good product.
Well,
That's
that's true,
for
and
so.
the whole concept was, oh well, it's Carolina's basketball crazy. Well, that part's true. The
Mhm.
problem is they're not NBA basketball crazy; they're college basketball crazy.
Yeah.
So there you go on that one. Florida beat Kentucky convincingly to get a even stronger hold on the SEC basketball
Mhm.
standings. And there was a bunch of interesting things over the Olympic weekend, and some outstanding skiing going on. And the it looks like the both on the women's side and the men's side, it's going to be a showdown eventually between Canada and the United States in hockey in both the women's and men's tournaments.
Yeah, I seeing the spread on that women's hockey game on Friday night was insane.
Mhm.
The over under was at 7.5, and the USA women's team was favored by 6.5. That's insane.
Yeah, it's like the other team didn't forgot to bring a goalie.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, here we are, my friend. This weekend, starting this weekend, we're going to be able to see we're going to see baseball. How about that?
Yeah.
The first games are on the 21st. I'm sorry, the 20th, and the first full slate of games was on the 21st.
Yeah. What's it called? So I have two things that I want to touch on. One I'll
Mhm.
get out of the way rather quickly, just because it's more of the same and it's very confusing to see. Well, technically both of them are more of the same. But the first one is the Braves once again. Hurston Waldrop, their young pitcher who came
Mhm.
in, pitched really well for them in the back half of the season last year after they were depleted. Now is having some elbow problems again. They believe that his ligament is fine. Um, but again, they're going to put him on the IL. That is another Braves pitcher on the IL with an elbow injury. I genuinely have no clue what their training program is or what they're doing, but they now have a legitimate problem in terms of their player health, especially when it comes to their pitching staff. I just don't get how it can keep happening. These guys, and you're in a more injury prone day and age in baseball, and that's understandable, and that's one thing,
Mhm.
but the frequency of which they're having injuries and they're not uniform. Like the Dodgers have pretty consistently their injuries in their
Mhm.
rotation, but one, they have enough money to spend and they do spend it in a way to where their injuries aren't as crucial to their pitching staff. Like they make it through the season based on their offense and based on their pitching staff depth. And now the Braves are at a point where even their pitching staff depth is getting hurt, and it's something that if it continues this way, they will not be able to succeed as a franchise because for the most part, you're going to have down periods with your bats. Like that's the way the season goes in terms of your bats. They go up and down. Sometimes you're hot and sometimes you're not. And you've
Mhm.
got to have pitching to get you through the dark spots for your lineup. And right now, if things continue to go this way, they just will not have that pitching.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about the Dodgers. If you looked at what the Dodgers did last season, is they had kids in the minors, plus they signed a couple of really phenomenal pitchers. They had at one point in time five of their pitchers on the injured reserve list,
Hmm.
and they still kept winning. And it basically, um, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they don't get a lot of credit for actually producing some pretty good kids in the minor leagues.
Yeah, they've done a good job. Emmett Sheehan's a guy that came on and started for them last year.
Mm-hmm.
A guy that I actually went to high school with, Justin Robleski,
Oh,
came
okay.
in and he gave them good innings throughout
Mm-hmm.
throughout the season when they were injured, and then when they got to the postseason, he moved to the bullpen and gave them good innings out of the bullpen as well.
Mm-hmm.
They develop their pitching staff depth really well because their pitching program, even though you may blame it for some of the injuries that the Dodgers have, is
Mm-hmm.
still probably one of the 5 best in Major League Baseball when it comes to pitching development overall. They're
Right.
really good at it, and so they have this farm system depth when it comes to their arms that
Mm-hmm.
you just can't really replicate. Like it's one of those things where if these guys were in a different system, they may not be as successful. It's similar to the Tampa Bay Rays. Like
Mm-hmm.
some of the guys that came up through the Rays system probably aren't where they are right now if it were not for the Rays system. You saw
Mm-hmm.
that with Chris Archer. Um,
Mm-hmm.
he was a good example of it. So they have that depth, and the Braves did have that depth, but now they're getting to a point where it's leaving quickly.
You mentioned the other day when we were talking about money spent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the Dodgers, and people are saying, well, they have all that money, blah blah blah. That's true, they do, but you know they don't sink all of it in the players. They sink a lot of it into um, a number of different areas. One, of course, is international scouting. The other is into health and fitness. I mean, they spend as much money or more than most teams do on everything from nutrition to even this past season when they rebuilt the entire clubhouses under the stadium. I mean, the whole concept with the Dodgers and successful teams in general is, sure, they spend money on the players, but they also understand there's got to be an infrastructure behind your 40-man roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there absolutely does. I mean, I'll tell you, watching the Red Sox play baseball,
Mm-hmm.
the last year things changed for them and they started winning more baseball games
Mm-hmm.
because the year before they went out and they got Andrew Bailey as their pitching coach. It
Mm-hmm.
completely changed their pitching and overall their pitching development. Some
Mm-hmm.
of that was front office related, some of that was coaching staff related, but both played an impact into the Red Sox improved pitching last year. And it was
Mm-hmm.
something that took them from a very honestly probably average to below average baseball team, one that made the wild card last year.
Right.
Um, the infrastructure behind these guys can be just that important. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you need to acquire players, you need to acquire talent, but it's just as important to have the talent that matches in the front office and the coaching staff as well.
We were talking about storylines for the first week and a half of um, of the spring training season, and we talked about the most important thing, as you were talking about, was depth and health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that they do when they go to spring training is they evaluate. Okay, we have any guy who had Tommy John surgery or any type of elbow surgery toward the end of the season in 2025, are kind of just getting back on the mound.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to throw them on the 60-day, IL list. That's a
Yeah.
definite right off the bat, right? So what that does is, second, it sets up, contenders to come to camp now knowing that we can test out some of these pitchers. But also, we also mentioned about how much turnover that happened with some of the teams this year. So some of the contenders are going to come to camp with more starters for rotation spots than they have, areas. So, for instance, Toronto, for example, has 6 or 7 guys in that could be starters for
Mm-hmm.
5-man rotation. So they can take the time to see early on who gets the start, who gets the long bullpen sessions, who gets put back in the minors for a while until we need them, and shuttle them back and forth. So there's that. Then there's the youth situation. You're always talking about, the young players, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the veterans headed to World Baseball Classic for some clubs, managers are going to put the workloads on the prospects, get them a ton of early looks, and organizations like Seattle and Cleveland are using the first couple of weeks to push these upper minor league bats and arms into big league situations just so they can see, are they really going to help us down the line?
Yeah. And you talked about the rotation depth. Boston's another place. You got 7 guys that can start. The Dodgers are a place where you have more starters probably than you do actual starting spots in the rotation. The Yankees probably going to be another team in that situation where they have young guys waiting.
Mm-hmm.
They'll probably have a full rotation in terms of spots to go around versus people that can fill them.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of places like that, and then you also have this added aspect of there are players departing for the World Baseball Classic. In fact, actually, speaking of which, there was a replacement for Corbin Carroll who broke his handmade bone, one of 3 big names that broke their handmade bone, joining
Mm-hmm.
Francisco Lindor and Jackson Holliday, and Roman Anthony will be replacing him for Team USA in the outfield. And yeah, it opens up these guys for these opportunities where these rookies of the year, like these rookies come in and they make an impact and they make a difference. I think in baseball, your rookies are potentially more important than any other sport just because of the ability they have to have an instant impact, especially now. We talked about the change in the way players are developed and how they're on this accelerated path to the major leagues. And that's more true than ever. These guys can come in. You can have a guy that doesn't win Rookie of the Year, but man, he bats 250 and he plays some really solid defense at a position that you guys did not fill throughout the offseason. And that can come up and be a difference maker. So guys like those are the ones that are going to come in, and inevitably when these teams get into October and they make these playoff pushes is, yes, they're going to have frontline stars, and that's going to matter. But there's going to be a lot of these guys who have not played a lot of Major League Baseball that maybe started their season in the minors that are playing significant roles on those teams that are competing for the World Series come the end of the year.
Well, if we go and look at the East, the Yankees went to Tampa with, their attention is basically on their retooled lineup and how it gels, right?
Mm-hmm.
The also thing you just mentioned was the rotation, and where do they slide after, after the one? We know who the one is, so that was a lock. But after that, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who are they? And basically, what happens? With a ton of pitching that they have, but we don't know really. Consistency has been a problem with them. After Garrett Cole, it's like, okay, who else? Where do we go?
Yeah.
Which is not saying the Yankees don't have good pitching. It's just saying identifying who is going to be the ones that take the mound on any given day.
Yeah, and they've got Cole that'll probably headline that. I'm curious to see how he bounces back. Obviously, he missed all of last year with the elbow injury.
Right.
And the bullpens say that I think they said he was touching 94. I'm curious to see. He's a guy that has relied a lot on his velocity. Like the fastball and the induced vertical break that he has on that fastball has been his best pitch throughout his entire career. All the other stuff is really good, but it works off of that fastball. So he needs to be able to kind of creep back up into that 96, 97 range to still kind of be able to have that ride on that fastball. So everything else can work off of it. But after Cole, you've got the 2 lefties in Fried and Rodon that'll fill out the rotation. And after that, the 3 young righties in Schlittler, Warren, and Heel. So I'll be interested to see how they fill it out. That's already 6 bodies there in a 5-man rotation. Maybe it's something where Cole is obviously going to be their one once he's healthy, but if they feel he needs a little bit more time, then they slot him in the 5, or maybe they start the season with a 6-man rotation just to let Cole rest a little bit more and use him more as a bullpen day and get him on some shorter inning days.
I'll be honest, I don't know why more teams don't go to a 6-person rotation.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do when you hear these guys talk about it is 6-man rotations kind of throw them out of a rhythm. They get used to that every 5 days kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so even sometimes when guys have that extra day off and it pushes their start back a day, it can throw them through the loop. They've said it before. So I think it has a lot to do with that. But in the grand scheme of things, especially with these elbows as fragile and this velocity being at a premium right now, it's something that I think teams might honestly need to explore a little bit more, taking some innings and some pitches off of these arms that are more taxed than ever before.
Mm-hmm. Steve Kinsella has writes for us at Sports Talk Florida. He covers baseball. This is his 10th year of covering the Rays in the East. And he's been to, he went down to Sarasota, saw, the Orioles for a while. He went over to Dunedin, chatted, looked at the Blue Jays. He went down to Port Charlotte and then down to Fort Myers to take a look at the Reds and the Rays and the Red Sox. And he was telling me that everybody in the Baltimore camp, the Orioles camp, everybody's betting on how good that young core responds. That's if you're now they did get Pete Alonso, which is not going to hurt them, but they've got a young team, and the expectations are that they could have some really good breakthrough players, maybe some of that top prospects that they have. We'll have to see. I mean, that's you're betting on in a division where you've got some pretty hefty teams to pass. The youth movement in Baltimore might not be there yet.
Yeah, if their young talent doesn't bounce back, like they want and expect them to, then they're already in a battle for fourth. The way things shape out, like with the moves that the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, and the Yankees made, or for some of them, it's a little bit of a lack thereof. They were just good enough in the first place. You're already fighting for fourth. Pete Alonso's a big step in the right direction. He does a lot, bringing power to that lineup. So does Taylor Ward. That's a move that I think kind of flew under the radar. They lost Cedric Mullins at the deadline. They went out, they added Taylor Ward from the Angels. He's another power bat in the outfield that will play for them. But yeah, when it comes down to it, Gunnar Henderson still did his job last year.
Yeah.
He played very well. But Jackson Holliday has to step up. Kobe Mayo has to step up. And the biggest piece of it all, and I think what's the tying piece for that entire Baltimore Orioles, like the clubhouse and the team in general, is going to be what Adley Rutschman does. Right. Because he's a guy now where you're starting to look at and go, is he on the trading block? Like genuinely. Because if he continues to play at the same level that he played last year, which was, I think he was hitting around 235, but his power had seemingly disappeared. Obviously, 235 is not a great average. And then when you have a young guy in Samuel Basallo sitting behind him who has shown up and is in that AL Rookie of the Year race and was hitting for some pop and really honestly gave them a little bit of a spark down the stretch, it's somewhere where you no longer have the infield spots for Basallo to play in the field consistently if Rutschman is not showing up at the plate night in and night out.
Right. It's funny. Steve said when he went to Dunedin at the Blue Jays camp, he said they're very confident. He said that really the only key storyline up there is, they have a logjam with their starting five. He said, so all these side sessions and simulated inning situations in the coming weeks, and obviously in the spring training games, are going to be evaluated very closely because, right now it's, again, we talked about pitching before, it's pitching with the Blue Jays, but he said that they're confident that they can compete for the division championship again with the roster they have.
I don't think that they shouldn't be confident. ALCS, they've still got a lot of that roster, but I don't think we need to kid ourselves and act like the Blue Jays got better. Or people seem to think they made like a significant addition in Dylan Cease, which I think is true. That would be a significant addition if you re-sign Bo Bichette or if you go out and you get Kyle Tucker. Like they still missed that big move of the offseason. Really, their biggest move of the offseason was in the middle of last season when they re-signed Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to that big extension.
Mhm.
Missing Bo Bichette is something of significance. Like, it's a big bat. He played a
Mhm.
big role in their World Series
Mhm.
in terms of his bat and how it played. He was a big time boost for them.
Mhm.
So while they made it there and they were very good, their bullpen didn't get better. And their rotation, while Dylan Cease is good under the hood,
Mhm.
still, when you look at it, he's got a lot of swing and miss to his stuff, but his ERA was still hanging around the fours last year. So he's really good. I just think he may be a little bit overvalued in terms of what people think of him as an addition to that Blue Jays roster. I don't think they'll be bad. I just think people may be a little bit higher on the World Series runner-up than I personally am at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think you can't underestimate him, but you certainly, if you can't lose Bo Bichette and not, I'm not gonna say take a step back, but not have it affect your lineup.
Yeah. No, and because it's such a significant bat. Like, his
Right.
bat was that good. I know his defense was probably average at best, even when he
Yeah.
was healthy, maybe a little bit above if he's at his best in terms of
Mhm.
his health. But still, it was such a good bat. He was hitting, what was he hitting, like 350 in the World
Yeah,
Series?
he just he came alive in the World Series.
Yeah. And that's a big bat that you're going to miss, and it's one that they're
Mhm.
happy to have in New York. It's part of that retooled infield for the
Mhm.
Mets. And it's one where you legitimately have to fill that gap because, like, Andres Jimenez is not hitting for that kind of power that Bo Bichette brought to the table.
Mhm. It's he asked me to ask you this question as a Red Sox fan. He said that the Red Sox open camp, as he looked at it, he said with way too many outfielders, how are they going to figure out who plays and who doesn't? Are they going to do a lot of uh, what is he? Well, I'm looking at my note here from what he said. Oh yeah, are they going to do a lot of situational left hand, right hand deals or defensive maneuvers late in games because they have some phenomenal outfielders and young outfielders, but way too many outfielders. He said he would imagine that maybe even some of them could be traded before the first of the year. I mean, the first
It's
of the season.
possible.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's possible. They've discussed in terms of Masataka Yoshida is a guy that they signed.
Hmm.
What was it? I think it was at the end of the 2021 year, maybe going into 22 or just before that. Regardless, he was a Heim Bloom signing. Really, aside
Hmm.
from Trevor Story, the biggest signing of Heim Bloom's career. He signed him to I believe it was 5 year, $80 million deal.
Hmm.
Very expensive, very rich. It has not panned out. Masataka Yoshida has been hurt. He's been a really good bat. Like, he makes
Hmm.
fantastic contact in terms of a hitter, but his power's lacking and his defense just is not there. He's not viewed highly across the industry in terms of trade prospects. It's something where if they're going to unload him, the report is that it's going to take a top 5 prospect or eating pretty much the entire salary to unload Masataka Yoshida. That's one option. And then another option or not an option, but another guy that's in the outfield is Christian Campbell. Highly regarded prospect. He broke camp with the major league team last year, had a fantastic April. I think he hit like 333 in the month of April last year, playing second base for the Red Sox. That was not his natural position. They shifted him back to outfield. He went back to the minor leagues. So he's another outfield option. You got Roman Anthony, Jaron Duran, Cedon Rafaela, Wilyer Abreu, 4 fantastic outfielders. They will rotate. But there is going to be an odd man out. Like, it has to be an odd man out because when you listen to Alex Cora and these guys talk, they
Hmm.
want Wilyer Abreu to be an everyday right fielder. He's
Okay.
been that good. He's won back-to-back Gold Gloves. The
Hmm.
first one he won in his rookie year, and he won one last year as well when he wasn't even fully healthy for
Hmm.
most of the year. Cedon Rafael is a Platinum Glove candidate annually if you let him play center field. And that's been every indication that Alex Cora has given. And then Roman Anthony's not going to be out of the lineup unless Roman Anthony has to be out of the lineup. Where does that leave Jaron Duran? That's the biggest question. And they tried offloading him in a couple of different trades. I think he was one of the first names to come out of the hat when they were talking about Ketel Marte.
Hmm.
It really any big name that the Red Sox went after on the trade market. Jaron Duran was the first name that was going out there because
Yeah.
I think it's probably the worst kept secret in the world, but this is a guy whose main tool is his speed. And as he continues to age, that's going to go down some. Like his defense isn't fantastic. He hits for some solid power and solid contact, but where he makes his difference is with his legs. So they were unable to offload him as well. But he's right. They do have a logjam. I would like to see a trade, but again, as things have just reading the tea leaves throughout these media sessions with Craig Breslow and Tom Warner and Sam Kennedy, which I'll get to in a minute because I got a axe to grind with those guys. It's a logjam that they didn't feel like they needed to address. It's one that they don't seem worried about going into the season. And if they're not worried about it, I would have to assume that Alex Cora isn't worried about it, and he's going to go with his same philosophy of we're going to mix and match, because that seems to be where he's at his best as a manager, at least.
Of course, since Steve covers the Rays, he sat down with Eric Nylander. And Nylander told him that, you know what? He said, new ownership, we decided, well, maybe we'll just, one of the things I do give credit to the new ownership was they didn't touch they didn't touch anybody in the hierarchy of the team. Eric Nylander is still there. Yeah, why would you? But it's been happening. People have bought teams and cleared everybody out.
Yeah.
So he said, we sat down. He said, Nylander said, new team, new ownership. He goes, we don't know the guys yet. Why don't we just, play, kind of like fly under the radar, which, he said, we'll get, we got a lot of good kids coming up. Well, let's just fly under the radar. And then he said, one thing led to another, and they made 6 deals, in the off season. And he said that he thought, and again, this is Steve, he said, if everything falls into place, which he said, that's always the line, right? If everybody stays healthy and everything falls in place. He said that he thought that they could be a contender for perhaps a wild card. He said that this is a team that can easily win 90-plus games if they stay healthy. He liked the move to get Gavin Lux. He liked, the maturing of some of the players. And he said, and then, of course, they're coming back to the Trop, where you're not going to play like they did Steinbrenner Field that last year, where a lot of games were played in the, low to mid 90s when the game started. So you're melting your players away back then. So I don't know. I mean, and the thing is with Steve, he's not, he's really not a homer. He evaluates everybody the same. He doesn't say, look out, they're going to win the division by any stretch of imagination. What he said, he does think that, he said that here's how he put it. He said, the entire division kind of got leveled out. And he said, which leaves an opening for whoever's hot. He goes, the Red Sox could end up the winning division, the Blue Jays, the Yankees. He goes, any one of those 3 teams, if everything falls right for them, could win the division. But he said at the same time, Toronto or the Yankees or the Red Sox, they could have an underwhelming season. So right now he's just saying, it's not a cut and dried division that the Yankees are going to win or the Blue Jays are going to win.
Yeah, no. When you look at it, I think and this is not to disrespect, but I think when you look at it in terms of talent level, it feels like it's the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Blue Jays, and the Orioles are on one level, and the Rays are below them in terms of their overall talent. Yeah. And part of that is just my perception, my thought process. When I think about the Rays trades they made throughout the offseason, I think about those names going out more than the names coming in. And you can even date that back to last season when they had Taj Bradley go out. They sent Shane Miles off. Brandon Lau is now playing in Pittsburgh. So those are all guys that they're going to miss. I understand that there is development, and dear God, if Junior Caminero continues to get better, he's going to be an MVP candidate. And Yandy Diaz, their corners are going to be fine. Chandler Simpson going to fly in center field. That's not going to be a problem. And you would assume that eventually they're going to get their pitching figured out because they, as we talked about earlier, one of the best pitching systems in baseball. I don't think that's really all
Steve,
that
Steve
debatable.
calls it the pitching lab.
Yeah, it's ridiculous what they pump out of there. Like some of the breaks they have on those pitches and the spin
Mhm.
rates, they're insane. Um, yeah, but I just think in terms of looking at it on paper headed into the season, I think they are a step below where those other four teams in the AL sit. And part of that is because Shane Baz, guess where he went? He went to Baltimore in that trade. Like they made their division rival better in that trade. So, they have some work to do, but I still wouldn't look at this as like they need to compete now anyways in terms of where they're at, just because they're headed towards a new stadium. This is going to be a first year under new ownership. The level of urgency in Tampa Bay is not going to be at 5 alarm yet.
Oh no. That's not it. I think, and again, remember this is the first week,
Yeah.
so there's a lot to go. But I think what Steve is trying to say here is that anybody looking at the league and saying, Toronto or the Yankees are alive and well. Thank you, Marshall. Good to see you. If you have any questions, just hit us up. We're right here, buddy. Okay. I think all he's trying to make is that he doesn't see a clear-cut favorite in the Eastern Division.
Yeah, no, I don't think there is a clear cut, because at that point, if you're projecting a clear cut division winner
Mhm.
in the AL East right now, you're doing it is just a projection. Like
Mhm.
you are expecting like the Red Sox like young investments to pop over the
Mhm.
offseason, or you're expecting Garrett Cole and that Yankees lineup to put it back together for a full 162
Mhm.
this upcoming year. You're expecting the Blue Jays to be a much better regular season baseball team than really they have been. Like that was the first time they've won the division in what was it, like 8 or 9 years
In a long time.
last year? Yeah.
Mhm.
And they have had rosters capable of winning the AL East
Mhm.
between then and now. Like that is something that is real. And what you're expecting also out of the Blue Jays is that their lack of additions in the bullpen is not going to hurt them long term, and their lack of additions bats wise is not going to hurt them long term either. I know they did get Okamoto from Japan, and he's a power threat, and
Mhm.
that's something that will play for them. And the same goes for the Orioles. Is at that point, if you're picking the Orioles, you're picking them because you believe their young players did bounce back.
Mhm.
So all of it is projection based at this point in time. There's not like you don't look at any one of those rosters on paper and just go, I think they're going to win because on paper they look like the best team in this division, like you
Mhm.
can in a lot of these other places.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too is indecision as to what exactly do we have. You
Yeah.
know, one thing I think is it's good for Blue Jays is that because they went to the World Series, had a phenomenal um, run there. That most of the time that Rogers Center is going to be sold out. That'll help Toronto. It's always good to play in front of a large crazy crowd, and so I think that's going to be very helpful to them as they move forward. Um, but as far as the rest of the teams in that division, it's a good division, you know,
Mhm.
uh, and it'll be fun to watch. It always is, even
Yeah.
when things sneak in there and sneak out. I'm not, I, I'm not necessarily sold on the young Orioles yet. Um, I'm more of a show me what you can do. They had a nice little run there a couple years ago, but they
Mhm.
haven't been able to replicate it, and I don't know
Yeah.
that they can, but we'll see. I thought that the addition of Pete Alonso was an interesting one.
Mhm.
Uh, it's never bad to have an extra bat, but there were other there were other needs that they had, and I'm not sure that they addressed it by getting Pete Alonso.
Yeah, starting pitching was the first and
Mhm.
foremost need for
Right.
the Orioles coming into the season. Like they can talk about their need for power.
Mhm.
If the guys that they already had on that roster bounced back, they would have gotten their power replaced.
Mhm.
They replaced some of it when they went and got Taylor Ward. Like that
Mhm.
that was a power bat addition in terms of what you're getting from the outfield position.
Right.
Um, Shane Baz was a good addition for the Orioles,
Mhm.
but yeah, they spent their money on Pete Alonso, which I thought was interesting given that rotation's need for arms.
Yeah. And Steve was talking to Nylander, and he said, the easiest thing for the new ownership would have been to try to land Pete, since Pete, is a Tampa guy and a University of Florida, alum. But he said, I'm not moving Junior from to from first base unless he gives me a reason. And he goes, and I don't know where Pete could play if he didn't play first base.
Yeah.
So he said he landed
This
in
is DHing for you.
He goes, well, he landed in Baltimore. We'll see him. We'll see if we made a mistake or not. But he says, as far as I'm concerned, Pete's a great player, but we're good at first base.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a reasonable stance to take if you're Tampa Bay. Like I said, the corners of their outfield are not going to be their issue with Yandy Diaz and Jr. Like that's just not going to be their issue this year. If the Rays have troubles, it's going to be everybody but, I would assume. So there is that. But Pete Alonso being in the division is definitely a legitimate threat, and like it made Baltimore better. It's just I think when you look at Baltimore's roster as a whole, it just is a little bit head scratching in terms of where they needed or what they needed, because that rotation, like that's what they needed. They needed the rotation. After they lost Corbin Burns heading into, what was it, 24, that rotation changed when they had him versus when they did not have him. It was a legitimate difference maker. You hear people talk about it. Like it's been one of the most famous talking points out of the Boston Red Sox camp from 23 into last year, now into this year, how much of a difference having Garrett Crochet at the top of that rotation makes. Like all these places, when you go out and you sign a number one guy, everybody slots in behind them and you understand your roles better and you pitch more coherently as a unit.
I think the key here too is just everybody getting comfortable with each other, and we'll see. It's not going to be long before we see some games and start to see if anybody is having fun and playing out there.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. All right. So we broke down a little bit of the East. Tomorrow, what we'll do is we'll take a look at the Central Division. We're staying in the AL to begin with, and then we'll cross over to the National League as time goes by and time allows. So for right now, that's just kind of our 40,000 foot view of what's going on a week and a half into baseball spring training. Now you said you had something to get off your chest about one topic. I think was it the Red Sox?
Yes.
To address that?
In particular, it's Tom Warner and Sam Kennedy.
Okay.
These guys are members of the ownership group, that Fenway Sports Group under John Henry. They've been a part of the organization forever. But good God, they have got to shut their mouths. They do these pressers, and they've done these pressers, and these pressers have obviously made more headlines through the years where they weren't spending money and they weren't very good. But this past weekend, they made headlines for all the wrong reasons. They came out, and I just have this.
What did they say?
I don't know if they think Red Sox fans are just that stupid, or if they think we're all 5 years old. Like, I don't know, because you're not just going to, like, they've lied over and over and over again. This is what Tom Warner had to say on the subject of Rafael Devers yesterday.
Okay.
A subject that did not need to be brought up, a player that is no longer on the Boston Red Sox and has not been for a while now.
So he brought it up.
But Tom Warner felt the need to bring it up. And he said, I don't like to speak ill of any player. I'd like to say that he is a wonderful person. But of course, when we had an injury at first base to Tristan Casas, his unwillingness to play that position was extremely discouraging. It was a discouraging episode. Just pick up a glove, end quote.
Okay.
They went out last offseason and they signed Alex Bregman. And the public statement when they signed Alex Bregman was, we signed him to be our second baseman because we have a third baseman. And then they broke camp and Alex Bregman was taking third base reps. And Rafael Devers got a little bit upset about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that the front office had not communicated to him. And then later, they asked him to put his glove down
Mm-hmm.
and DH for them. And then they got upset because they did not handle that situation correctly. You
Mm-hmm.
don't need to go speak on that. It is a topic about a player on another team from last year. You made a lot of good moves. You
Mm-hmm.
had some forward momentum going in. You made a really good trade. Was it Ketel Marte? Was it what every Red Sox fan had dreamed of in terms of filling out their infield? Was it
Mm-hmm.
Nico Horner? No. But it was Caleb Durbin, a guy who finished third in NL Rookie of the Year last year, who played really good. One of those guys that I talked about. I said you're going to have some guys that show up and
Mm-hmm.
play a contributing role. He showed up and he played a big role in the Brewers' run last year in the playoffs. A legitimate piece that gives you good momentum, even with some of the just like blatant like ignorance for certain roster issues, such as the outfield logjam. Um, and yet they felt a need to come up and talk about Alex Bregman and talk about Rafael Devers and talk about really what are things that come down to ownership in the front office blundering these moves. If
Mm-hmm.
Alex Bregman wanted to be a Red Sox, or if they wanted Alex Bregman to be a Red Sox, he would be a Red Sox right now.
Mm-hmm.
They made excuses as if it was something that it wasn't, it wasn't our fault. Alex, I think it was Sam Kennedy that may have made notion to he thought it was stuff outside of the contract stuff, and that he said, quote, if Alex Bregman wanted to be a Boston Red Sox, he would be. Well, yeah, that has a lot to do. You're not I think they just have this like ill-conceived notion because they're the Boston Red Sox, people just want to play for them. Open your eyes. Craig Breslow was not your first choice to run
Mm-hmm.
your baseball operations, but he was the choice that you had to make because of the shit show that your front office has put on for all of these years,
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again. And then you guys get up to the podium and you lie to fans over and over and over again. And then finally, you put together a good year. You did a good job. You went out. Did you spend the money the way that I think everybody wanted you to? No. But you went out, you spent some money. Yeah, you let Bregman go, but you made a trade to kind of fill in that infield
Mm-hmm.
at the best you can. And then you come out after really what was something that wasn't going to be reflected all that poorly on the front office of an offseason. And you just said, hey, fuck it. Let's just go burn our PR right here. Like somebody has to teach these guys what we do and do not talk about. Those are both past experiences, and there is no reason to discuss them. But they felt the need to just, go full throttle for some reason on these two guys that are formerly Boston Red Sox. And the reason they're not Boston Red Sox now is solely because of the actions of the front office and the ownership groups.
Well, the ownership can make the general manager and the manager's life hell. And if what they did was bring in Alex Bregman, like you said, to you know to play second base, and he ends up playing third base, and they just say go put on a glove. Obviously, Tom Warner has never played baseball because you just don't ask people to go play a position they haven't played and don't want to play. And it's clear that there are times when they simply overlook the actual baseball aspects of it. I wonder if Tom Warner, if he said it there Sunday, he wasn't down at watching Roush Fenway Racing down at Daytona. Um, sometimes they get, and the funny thing about Tom Warner is that Tom Warner's a television producer. This is a guy who should know how to, spin things and put things in the right perspective. But why would you bring up two things that the fan base is going to get mad at you for?
Yeah, and especially when you're in a place where, as Boston was really entering these final weeks, headed into spring training, you looked at that roster and you said, "Man, what do they need?"
Mm-hmm.
Boy, they really could use some power.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, your glaring hole in the infield is third base.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder where there's somebody who hits for power and plays third base. Oh wait,
you could have had
in San Francisco now.
right.
That's what happened. Like it's just it's tone deaf, it's idiotic, and they just for two guys that have been in the business for as long as they have got to know how to conduct themselves better in a press conference, especially in the manner that they did. Like it was inconceivable how they could come up with such a tone deaf attitude and feel so disconnected from the fan base. And it does not buy them any good grace in terms of like if this season starts poorly for the Boston Red Sox.
Mhm.
It is all on like people will be upset with our score and they will be upset with Craig Breslow. That's going to happen. They need somebody to blame. There's always got to be a scapegoat, right?
Sure.
When in reality, your issues are sitting in the front office. When the Boston Red Sox were winning World Series titles, it's because that front office was bought into this being one of the best baseball teams in the league year in and year out in terms of their spending, in terms of how they approach things, in terms of how bought in they were as an ownership group. Right now, it feels like as an ownership group, they feel about 100,000 miles away from this team and where these fans are in relation to the Boston Red Sox.
Well, I think we talked about it earlier when we talked about the Rays' new ownership group saying Eric Nylander runs the show. We're good with the baseball operations people. Let them alone. Whatever they need to do, let them do. You know, the Guttenheimer group that owns the Dodgers, right? You never hear about them. They don't say anything. All you hear about is Stan Kasten and Friedman, Andy Friedman. Good organizations, you don't hear the ownership group that much. They have to sign off, obviously, on some major things if you want to make a trade or if you want to sign somebody. But beyond that, you have to trust the people you hire. And I think that one of the problems, at least from people I've heard from who I know very close to the operations, is that Chaim Bloom couldn't take it anymore.
No.
He just things that he wanted to do is things they didn't want him to do.
Yeah. And that's again that's another part of the problem. Like the reason that Craig Breslow is currently your president of baseball operations is because of how you treated Chaim Bloom. Like they treated him, and you look throughout the history of the Red Sox organization in terms of their president of baseball operations. This is kind of always the way they've done it. They've moved them. They've almost hired in terms of where their vision is for the team moving forward. They hired Chaim Bloom. They hired him to get rid of Mookie Betts. They hired him to rebuild this farm system. They hired him to cut payroll in hopes of still building a competitive roster. And then when Chaim Bloom went to spend the money, they said no. You can't blame him for wanting to move on at all. And you can't blame him for the way that things turned out in Boston. In fact, some of the success that they're having in Boston right now is a result of Chaim Bloom and his drafting. It is a result of him building that farm system, which he was hired to do, by the way. And then when you fire him after he did what you asked of him, and you go out into that candidate pool and say, hey, the Boston Red Sox president of baseball operations and general manager positions are open. Who wants it? And it's crickets on the other end of the line. That's because you did something wrong, not because the guy you fired was doing a bad job. He did exactly what you asked, and you weren't grateful for it.
Well, the other thing, too, which I thought was kind of funny, was Chaim was out of work for 3 weeks before the Cardinals picked up the phone and said, come on down.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals are an organization that they stick with people a long time. I mean, it's not like something. So they had a situation where their general manager had and the baseball ops people had basically, were set to retire, and they wanted somebody young. They brought Chaim in, and he'll be in St. Louis, and they'll listen to whatever he says because that's the way they run the show in St. Louis.
Yeah.
So,
and he's doing in St. Louis, he is doing the exact same thing that the Boston Red Sox asked of him, and I think he's doing it to a similar effectiveness. When you look at the trades that they executed this year, 2 of them with the Boston Red Sox, and you look at the prospect calls that they got back in those deals, it's something where he has replenished that farm system now. For a team that was not in a competitive window, he has replenished the farm system through trades of Wilson Contreras, through trades of Sonny Gray, through the trade of Brendan Donovan to the Mariners, he through the Nolan Arenado trade to Arizona. Like this is something where These guys were aging assets on
Mhm,
what was, relatively speaking, a non-competitive baseball team, and he
mhm,
offloaded them for prospects that will pay dividends, most likely in the near future. Like, a lot of those
mhm.
guys aren't far off from the major leagues.
And it's funny because St. Louis is a great baseball town.
Mhm.
Boston's a great baseball town. Two different fan bases. Fan base in St. Louis, they're with you win or lose. And by the way, possibly the most polite fan base in all of baseball, because if you make a play and you're on the opposing team, they'll give you a standing ovation or applause.
Yeah,
So I think for Heim, he probably landed in a spot where he's going to flourish for
you would,
him.
you would think so. Yeah.
And I do think in the case of just to put a button from my view of the Red Sox, which may not be the same view as you, I think that when you start getting into the donut and NASCAR business, and also, you know, the um,
The Premier League
the
and
Premier League, I, it's one thing to want to build the business out. I get that, but to use the Fenway brand, so to speak, to do a lot of things that have nothing to do with what you bought the team for.
mhm.
Um, it's got to split up your focus on what's going on. You cannot tell me that they spend as much time on the Red Sox as they do on the race car team, on Liverpool, and on making donuts.
Yeah, and it's hard, and it's something that, again, like you talk about it, for these guys that have been in it for as long as they have been in this business,
Mhm,
people just not knowing how to do PR, like, at all in
mhm,
general. Like,
mhm,
they traded Rafael Devers, and based on the unwillingness to spend money really prior to last season, like before Alex Bregman, their biggest signing was Trevor Story in terms of dollar amount in the offseason. Like, it had been a while since they had spent legitimate cash on a free agent for the Boston Red Sox. And you watch this guy that you just inked to a like what was it,
yeah.
$320 million 12-year deal to play third base for the remainder of his career, really, as a Boston Red Sox.
Mhm,
And not even a year into that deal, you ship him off to San Francisco, and then a day later, you have a $212 million transfer for Liverpool.
mhm,
You're guess where people's minds are going to go. Like, it's
mhm,
right there in front of you. They're asking you again, treating us like we are five, to
mhm,
just kind of throw the blinders up. Whatever,
mhm.
it's not happening. Whatever you think's happening, that's not happening. Like, we're not stupid. This is one of the, like, you get a fan base that is one of the most bought in fan bases in all of baseball, but as bought in as they are also that much angrier in terms of when you lied to their face repeatedly. Like, they're not stupid. And
Well,
we're not stupid as a whole. Like,
right.
we can see the tea leaves and what you've done. You are not as invested in this baseball team as you want to. I mean, dear God, John Henry posted a picture of him smoking a cigar after the Boston Red Sox signed Alex Bregman, kind of like to announce that he's back, like they're back spending.
Mhm,
And where are we now? Let's see here. Yeah, February 16th. Alex Bregman is wearing a Chicago Cubs uniform now because you were not willing to include a full trade clause into a contract for a star player who had
mhm,
legitimate concerns regarding his long-term future because he doesn't want to be moving around
mhm,
as child his child and his family continue to grow
mhm,
overall. He wanted assurances that he was going to be in Boston, something that
mhm.
has not been promised to any superstar in Boston for a very long time. Rafael Devers gone. Xander Bogaerts gone. Mookie Betts gone. Like, these guys they have not committed long term to a superstar in what feels like an eternity.
Since Larry Bird.
Yeah, and so now you're expecting Alex Bregman to just be like, "Yeah, I'll give you 10 and 5 rights. That's fine. I think I should be safe here." No. You've shown no loyalty to any of
Mhm.
your other stars. Why would he have any idea that he was stable and secure in Boston if he did not have a full no trade clause?
We'll put a button on this show in a second, but for Matt, we put our background is Fenway Park, ironically, and the irony to all of this is Fenway Park as a tourist attraction makes more money than some of the Major League Baseball teams, at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
That stadium is full every night that there's a baseball game.
Yep.
It is full when they do events that they do there, from concerts to, different hockey games that they play, bowl games that they play out there. It's a cash cow.
Mm-hmm.
Just the stadium itself is a cash cow.
I mean,
without the people buying seats, it's a cash cow.
Yeah, I was up there not this past year. It was the year before for the Army Navy game. It was held in New England, and me and my dad flew into Boston. And just because I wanted to be honest with you, it's been a while since I've been up there. I just wanted to get in the stadium, so we took the guided tour. It was a packed guided tour on like a rainy 2 p.m. on like a Thursday or so, or like a rainy Sunday. That's what it was. We were flying out. It was a rainy Sunday at like 2 p.m. and this tour's packed for Fenway Park. So, it generates more than enough money. It's got the most expensive concessions in all of baseball. It's got the most expensive ticket price in all of baseball in terms of average ticket price. And so it is a cash cow that you're talking about. Yeah. And it's absurd that the owners continue to penny pinch this baseball team and this fan base the way that they have.
Yeah. To be continued, as they say. So we're going to leave the Red Sox Nation on that one, and tomorrow we'll take a look at one of the most curious divisions in baseball, which seems to always end up with some bizarre stuff happening, and that, of course, is the Central Division of the American League. So if you want to find out how bizarre it's going to get and continue to be bizarre, join us tomorrow, because believe me, it ain't going to get any different. Take care, everybody. Have a nice day.